Good day. Welcome to The Pipeline. This is the Western Standard's weekly news and opinion show where a few of us get together and talk about what's topping the headlines around here week by week. My name is Cory Morgan, columnist, host to The Cory Morgan Show. You usually have Derek Fildebrand sitting in this seat, but he couldn't make it today. So we are joined with Dave Naylor, our news editor.
Cory, I'm not a very happy man today.
Why would that?
Well, a reporter, Mel Risdon, sitting over here, has been prancing around the office all morning singing Justin Bieber songs and saying, I've got to go to Tim Hortons and get my Bieb bits.
Yes, or wasn't it Bieber's glazed balls? So Melanie Risdon is our reporter. So let's talk about Bieber's balls for a moment. We may as well kick off with
They're Tim Biebs.
Oh, sorry.
Tim Biebs. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this is exciting news, is it?
Well, I mean, it's kind of cute. He's a big fan of Tim Hortons. I mean, he's putting it on the map for a lot of people. He's kind of loved worldwide, so he's collaborating with Tim Hortons, and he's coming out with 3 flavored Timbits called Tim Biebs.
Tim Biebs.
Tim Biebs.
I prefer Biebs bits.
Biebs bits. Well,
I'm not going to go any lower on this one.
Could kind of go down a different, yeah.
But it is a story that's on the Western Standard Online, actually. If you haven't gone in and had a look, we don't always write nothing but dry political stuff. That's more my and Dave's specialty.
Yeah.
But we need to read about other items of interest. And Bieber is a notable Canadian, whether you like him or not, as Tim Hortons is certainly a Canadian brand.
Yes.
Okay, going further, actually, just to point out, it's November 10th. So Remembrance Day is tomorrow. As you can probably tell with the people wearing the poppies, make sure to take a moment and, thank the veterans who came before us and the veterans who are still around today who put it all on the line so we can have the freedoms to get together and complain about our political leadership like we do, because we wouldn't be able to if those guys hadn't have done it, and gals.
Mm-hmm.
So we should make a note, observe that, go to a ceremony tomorrow, or perhaps just take a moment home to think about it. It's pretty important, and I think underrated observance every year. We do everything else from Arbor Day to who knows what, but Remembrance Day is a really crucial one. So. Mm-hmm. All right, well, let's get into the news stories. Oh, actually, I should start also and thank our members.
Yep.
I've always got to thank them. Those are the people who pay our bills, and eventually in the painful way of trickle-down economics that we do espouse, it does get to us a little bit. We wouldn't be able to do this, though, without subscriptions. We aren't government-funded media like so many others, like the CBC, that gets it just outright directly as a virtual state broadcaster, or some of the other publications out there who get subsidies and tax incentives and such. We are a private company reliant on the listeners, the viewers, the readers. And, we give a good deal for $10 a month. Get on there, go to westernstandardonline.com. You can get a free trial, take out a membership. You can get past that paywall, see the content, the editorials, the columns, the news. We get stuff breaking all the time. I think you'll find it well worth your while, and you'll keep your subscription past that first trial period. It's a good deal. So thank you for those who've already subscribed. And if you guys haven't already, get out there and do it. Now, news that's been breaking. We'll start with something that's kind of good news, some positive news. The economy's been dreary and sad and depressing in a lot of ways, but there's been a big coup. A large company is moving out to Alberta. Dave, perhaps you can expand on that.
Yes, Amazon is coming to town. It's a $4.3 billion deal for the Calgary area. They're going to set up a tech shop, basically, to do techie things that are well beyond my capabilities and help companies with their tech needs. They're going to be needing thousands of staff. Like even places like Mount Royal University are offering a free course on how to get into the tech business. I think it's a 12-week program that you can basically walk from there and get a job at this upcoming Amazon facility. But one of the key questions, Cory, that's not being answered is, where is it going to be located? Specifically wasn't mentioned. Google says it's because of security purposes that they don't want the location known. It would have been a major coup if it had come to downtown Calgary, because it's a ghost town right now. We can use all the people down here that we can get. But Cory, I think it's probably more likely to go to an outlying area who get better tax deals.
I don't know, like Melanie, you've been downtown lately. I mean, this is certainly an area that could use a resurgence, some energy, something new. I mean, what do you feel maybe this will bring some activity downtown into the core? Or?
Yeah, I think so. Western Standard just did a story yesterday about the office buildings. I think there's 19 different office buildings that are sitting completely empty downtown. So
I would say there's certainly room for it. I think it would be a great way to revitalize downtown, especially considering when you're talking the tech industry, you're talking a lot of young, I guess, vibrance, right? So that's going to potentially be something that comes back into our downtown core. However, having said all of that and walking the downtown streets quite frequently, it would be great to see maybe another precinct downtown or some heavier presence to try to clean things up, and perhaps that would instigate it.
Yeah, well, and I mean, as Dave said, it's noteworthy. They keep referring to it as Calgary area. And there are some people very desperate to see, a couple of victories in downtown Calgary. For one, with economic diversification, because the new mayor has said we want to move beyond oil and gas. We need everything else, and of course we want to fill those vacant buildings downtown. So, but I just got a feeling. I mean, they know where they're going. This is a big deal. They've planned it out. This has been in the works for quite a while. She would be screaming it from the rooftops if it was going downtown. And look, Here we are, here it's going. I suspect it's not going downtown. It might not even be in city limits. She's been actually, optimistic, of course, because it's still good for all Albertans, no matter where it is. But a little quiet that maybe it might be up by Cross Iron Mills, where the other Amazon facility is. And it certainly would employ a lot of Calgarians, but it doesn't help that downtown crunch. In fact, it might even bleed a little bit. It'd be interesting to see how this develops.
Yeah, it's not going to help Calgary's tax roll either, is it? If it's out in Rocky View County, which I think you're right. I think that's probably where it's going to end up.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be indirect. A lot of employees would perhaps commute from Calgary to the facility, and they come home and pay property taxes in Calgary and other fees, but they wouldn't have that business to gouge as they so enjoyed out of oil companies for so long downtown. And of course, they overplay their hand, and that's part of why our downtown is vacant. But that's a larger discussion.
This week, Jody Gondek, our new mayor, got her climate emergency motion on the table unanimously. It's going to be debated on Monday in Calgary, but I can't see that helping to bring energy businesses anyways, back to downtown.
Well, but I think the positive though is when you're seeing a big player like Amazon setting up tech here, I think you're going to find all sorts of subsidiary companies or other tech companies looking towards Calgary as well, sort of a precedent setter, a trailblazer, and so maybe that will bring more business here that would.
Bezos didn't get to be the richest man in history for being stupid. He's going to go where the taxes are lowest.
Yeah, well, and we got all that empty space. Maybe we'll get an Amazon proving ground here, and Bezos can send his next phallic rocket from North.
Right.
That big old flying chode was quite something to be seen crossing the skyline. Alberta could get a piece of that.
Yeah.
But as you say, no, there could be a lot of associated businesses that come with Amazon. I mean, a longtime columnist in Calgary, Don Braid, wrote an interesting piece. One of the things he spoke to is what Melanie was speaking of was, I think the term he uses is he draws other associated companies like filings to a magnet. They will come in and come around such a hub. But the other part he did say was that, he was basically almost trying to credit the climate emergency, saying that these companies come to cities because they've declared such things. And he pointed out Montreal is the only other one with such a hub, and they declared a climate emergency. And I got to call bullshit. I mean, Amazon made this decision a long time ago. And I'm certain when they were in the boardroom, they weren't saying, oh, geez, yeah, that city looks pretty good, but that one's got a climate emergency. That's the drawing. Come on. They're looking at dollars and cents. They're looking at space. Sure, they're looking at quality of life, and they're looking at a great deal of factors, but whether or not the city is virtue signaled with a climate emergency, I think is very, very low on the priority list of companies when they're determining where they're going to go. And if you're an oil company or a gas company, which is still paying the majority of the bills in Calgary, whether Jody likes it or not, they're going to be less inclined to come to a city that's declared a climate emergency.
Right.
It's going to be interesting, though. At least Jason Kenney was able to put a feather in his cap as well. I mean, it's something coming into Alberta, something diversifying the economy. We should celebrate it. It's going to put some people to work, and it's going to be, in a forward-moving industry that's certainly been explosively growing. So,
good news for a change.
So let's get on to some bad news. One of my favorite areas. Leader O'Toole there with the Conservative Party of Canada has not had a good week. Lay out what he's been enduring this week, Dave.
It actually started last week, Cory, when Ontario MP Gladue announced she was forming a separate COVID caucus of up to 30 Tory MPs who would just deal with COVID-19 issues like mandatory vaccinations and things like that. Seemed a strange move to a lot of people. It followed this week on Monday with the knowledge or release of a story into Tory Council member Bert Chen. He was suspended for 60 days because he called for the recall of Aaron O'Toole as the leader the day after the September elections. So he put out that petition. He got suspended. Now they've launched, the Tory party's launched a witch hunt. They are demanding that he turn over all his personal emails, social media postings, all sorts of correspondence, because they want to try and find out who within the party he was talking to. They want to try and weed out the dissidents. Then it got even stranger for O'Toole. MP Gladue came out the next day, Tuesday, and apologized. Said she was all wrong about COVID, and obviously she'd been whipped into place. O'Toole then announced his shadow cabinet yesterday. Some good news for the West with the naming of Michelle Rempel-Garner as natural resources critic, and Pierre Poilievre going in back to finance. He was very good at that, but somehow, for some reason, moved out of it when O'Toole named a shadow cabinet in February. Noticeably absent was Leslyn Lewis, a strong leadership contender and perhaps a future voice of the party. And the MP Gladue also didn't get in there, obviously, because of her COVID coalition. So up and down week for O'Toole. He's also been blasted for staying silent on the Trudeau's plan to shut down oil and gas emissions out west, which is going to decimate our oil industry even further. He hasn't said word one about that, and I know you wrote a column on that, Cory. And he's trying to hide in the weeds, I think.
Yeah, well, I mean, one thing to be said, though, is a couple of, as I say, with Rempel and Poilievre, I mean, those are vocal shadow cabinet people. They will be speaking up on those issues that he has been weak on. So I guess perhaps, Melanie, that's a good sign, seeing some other voices is talking to those issues or speaking on the finances and Western concerns.
Yeah, Western concerns for sure. I think Michelle Rempel will, represent Alberta well. I personally just think, O'Toole is struggling to stay relevant, and he is, I think trying to create diversions for the fact that he's staying silent on things that you would suspect that he would have opinion on, or he would be contributing to, specifically for Trudeau's stance on the environment and how that's going to affect the West, and like you said, cripple the province's oil and gas sector.
In fairness, the silence isn't just deafening from O'Toole. It's deafening from every Western Conservative elected. Sure. Nobody said anything. And you would think somebody may put up their hand and say, yeah, I don't think my constituents would like this. But it's just, the silence is deafening.
And I did, as you said, ripped into him at Western Standard Online in one of my columns for that last week. And I had some people, coming after me on social media, showing some tweets from O'Toole questioning Guilbeault's appointment, saying, no, he hasn't been silent. Look at that. Well, that was 3 weeks ago, and that was before this emissions cap declaration. Right. If that's the best you guys can do, he's not standing up for us, guys. It's not even close. I mean, this is a major issue. This is headlines for a week. You'd think the leader of the official opposition would be front and center on it. You speak to it. You break it down. Even if you're supporting it then. But hiding, that's just cowardice. But, it's been a rough week. And then Gladue, she's the MP for Sarnia area, I believe. Always been a backbencher, if I can recall. But for her to come out and it's something I'm sure he didn't want to hear. But I mean, there's we know it, we hear it a lot here at the Standard. There's a very vocal constituency concerned about vaccinations, mandatory vaccinations, COVID issues, things such as that. The PPC spoke to that constituency before. The election is done now, and they feel voiceless. She got up to speak to that group. But the other thing that O'Toole's well aware of, as the PPC demonstrated, it's a minority and a small one and a divisive one. And it's the last thing he wanted to dip his foot into was that debate. I mean, the Liberals have been hammering him on that, and the media, of course. It's been repugnant watching the Liberal media. Actually, they sound worse than Trudeau when they constantly, are your MPs vaccinated? Are you going to make them get vaccinated? Have you checked for holes in their arms? Have you, followed them into the room to make sure it was a real vaccination? I mean, they're brutal. But then to have Gladue come out and open it up, and how quickly she came around with a full, unreserved, I was dead wrong. I didn't mean a thing I said. I'm sorry about that. It'll never happen again. That backroom spanking must have been something pretty thorough.
And meanwhile, Trudeau's just sitting back at 24 Sussex or wherever he lives now, laughing.
Oh, yeah.
He doesn't have to do anything because everybody's so focused on the Tories tearing themselves apart, as they are wont to do.
Well, it's a conservative thing. It's not just federal. We're all good at that. And then with Chen, I mean, and that's showing, I say, a leader who's feeling insecure. He is uncomfortable. When you're trying to track down communications like that, that's a purge. That's discomforting. When you communicate with executive committee members in a party or a national council, you're thinking that's going to be between you and them.
Yep.
And now he's demanding communications after suspending a guy for daring to critique him. That's not a party that's feeling secure and stable right now.
No, and Chen's lawyer called it unprecedented. So it's going to be interesting.
Well, and speaking of rubbing his hands together, that'll be Maxime Bernier as more disenchanted Conservatives drift his way.
Yep.
He's moving towards a leadership review, but I think it's kind of been a pretty strong one-man show with the PPC. Max, if he wants it, we'll keep it.
I don't see anybody taking it over from him.
So speaking of infighting Conservatives who love beating up on each other, yes.
Nice segue.
Brian Jean has reemerged from the sidelines where he's been lobbing a lot of grenades at Jason Kenney over the years, but never officially got back into the political game. And now he's come in full bore, and he is
looking to be nominated for the UCP party in Fort McIlwraithing. Brian Jean, you'll remember, ran as leader of the Wild Rose and ran for the leadership of the UCP, but lost to Jason Kenney. As Cory mentioned, he's been sitting on the sidelines, throwing in grenades more and more over the last year, and finally made it official, announcing he was going to seek the nomination. You can talk about how nomination processes sometimes don't go the way they should. Jason Kenney basically just called him a distraction. He said he'll sign nomination papers for whoever the party selects. Jean's openly said he's only running to help the process of getting rid of Kenney. So it's going to be interesting. The hallways of the Grey Eagle Casino will be filled in 2 weeks' time with political intrigue with the annual UCP AGM. And I'm sure Brian Jean will be on the lips of a lot of people, Cory.
Well, assuming they let us in, we'll be there to cover it.
Yes.
Well.
For that. So, I mean, what did you, in Fort Mac, do you think Brian Jean would be able to establish himself again up in that region? I mean, he's a well-entrenched personality up there.
I personally think he could. Yeah, I do. I think he could. And taking another run at Kenney, it kind of feels like, Kenney's in a vulnerable position these days. I think there's a lot of call for Kenney to step down from many people. So maybe it's good timing for him.
Well, and that's part of the issue is that if this was somebody who didn't have an established constituency, somebody who you could block the nomination on, who you could shove aside, the chances are as an independent, they would never take that seat. But Brian Jean's in a different position. This was a member of parliament for a number of years. He was a popular MLA up there. Even if Kenny's poking the shots at him, on his having left both of those roles before finishing terms, he could very realistically win that without a UCP nomination. And that changes the whole game, I think, for how Jason Kenney has to deal with this.
Maybe Jason Kenney's being nice to sign his papers because he knows he's not going to be around. The first thing we said when we heard the news was, there's no way Kenny's going to sign his papers. But he's saying all the right things now. But Jean could easily cruise to victory up there.
Yeah, well, and as we talked about before, and we've talked in the office, and Derek and I, and we've dealt with nominations. I mean, there's a lot of ways parties can play with things to give an edge or pull the rug out from somebody who's running and things like that. But again, it's easier with a smaller name. Jean, it's going to be difficult to get a ringer in there to try and sell memberships and beat him for a nomination, which would be the best thing Kenney could hope for. Well, I gave him a chance and he lost.
Yep.
but that would be a tough go for him. But if Gene gets elected, you've got a caucus member, another caucus member. I hear has been pretty open about calling for Kenney's resignation. You're starting to build a whole section of caucus calling for Kenney's head. I mean, how long could he last with that?
Well, and people want change.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting for the independents, those who were kicked out of the UCP, like Drew Barnes and Todd Lowen. Drew has said, I think he's running again. He's going to have to run as an independent, and Alberta just tends not to elect independent MLAs. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with those two.
Yeah, well, and I personally don't think Kenney's going to make it to the next election. I don't. And whoever comes in to replace him, that might be where I notice. I'm just guessing here, but Todd and Drew have both been. They've stayed away from, say, joining the Wilders Independence Party. Drew floated an idea of forming a new party, but I don't think he's going kind of ahead with that. They're biding their time, and if a new leader comes in, chances are they'll come back to the UCP caucus, I suspect, later on. But this is all a lot of speculation.
Yeah, I think at the UCP AGM, Kenney's going to have to deliver the speech of his life, or that could be the last one he attends.
Agreed.
That's it. I'm looking forward to getting in there. I mean, there's where you can really find out what's going on with the party loyal. You get to, the speeches are great, but the hospitality suites are even better. Get a couple drinks into
Never
a cabinet
been.
minister and see what they may or may not. I shouldn't warn them that I'll be listening.
And there's blackjack
Yes. Yeah,
and slot
if
machines.
you haven't gambled enough with the party, just go on over to the casino and invest a little
I
there.
hear some of them like to drink.
Yeah. Good point. Good timing.
Good point. Yes, some of them do like to drink.
Yes, and liquor and conventions. That's an interesting point. I mean, I wonder how many orders from above. Just so recently having been acutely stung. I mean, booze and these conventions and these parties have always gone hand in hand for a long time, and it has bitten them before. But having it so recently, nobody's going to want to see a YouTube video of an elected member stumbling around saying something foolish or something like that. So I would.
So you'll have the camera rolling all weekend.
Oh, of course. So there's going to be some, and I'm dry these days, guys, so you can't count on me missing anything. So
Awesome.
Well, but that pretty much covers what's been standing out in the news this week. An interesting one, and then lots of political intrigue going on.
And Beeb's Bits?
Beeb's Bits. So
Yeah,
make sure
they won't be available until later November.
What? So we
that's
can't go
the
get some today?
Not today.
So you
no.
might actually do some work this afternoon?
Maybe.
might have to get the regular Timbits and just imagine Beeb's Bits as you
Yes.
consume them. Okay, well, thank you all for joining us this week, sans Derek. And thank you, Dave and Melanie, for being in support as I was suddenly thrown into the spotlight and hosting this fine production.
Most of all, thanks to the veterans and our
Yes.
members.
Absolutely. And we will see you all next week at the same time.